saying all things in moderation applies to many things in life, including the argument of what is real and answering that question. Two main ways to identify the argument is idealism versus materialism. Idealism is the idea that all things that can be considered real are simply ideas, that's it. Hence the name idealism. And materialism is the idea that all things that are real are physical. This pen, because I can feel it, is real. The desk is real, I can feel it. I think that falling to these extremes is a bit dramatic, and I think you need to have a happy medium in order to answer this question the best way possible. And the best way possible out of the middle ground options is objective realism. Things exist, but they have no meaning until a person, a higher being that can think, gives them one. Like Jackie's idea with the infant. I was just a baby when I was born. I had no name immediately. I was just a being. I was real, but I had no meaning. My parents gave me a name, and then I became who my parents named me. I became McKenzie Lilly. There's also the struggle of determinism versus free will. Determinism, all things are predetermined. It's sort of like believing in fate. All things can be determined when you know the causes and the internal and external stimuli. There's problems with this, but I will address that later. In free will, you have all these choices, whether you choose to walk out of this room, whether you choose to jump off a cliff, something dramatic. It's all up to you. That's what free will states. Again, the best way to go about following this argument is choosing middle ground. That way you have the most likely chance of finding the correct answer, and that is active self-determinism. Active self-determinism means you have a set number of choices, but the more you address the situation, the more you can add more choices to that set. Some examples of that would be like objective idealism is a table is just an object until you give it a name. Like Natalie said on Monday, for us, a table is probably classified as what you see in front of you here. 4 legs, a flat top. You usually put things on top of it, but for Creed, a table could easily just mean a chair, because oftentimes he sits on them instead of using it as a table. It all depends on you as a person, how you name it, whether you choose to follow social norms or not. An example of active self-determinism is much like that of Blackburn's, whether you enter a room with a cat, but you can't, because of your past or whatever reasons, you cannot be around cats. It's simply not acceptable for you to do. The immediate few thoughts you could have would be, if the room that you're in has a window, you could either choose to leave the room, but you need to be in that room for a reason, otherwise you wouldn't have come into that room. You could jump out the window yourself to avoid being around the cat, but that's probably not the best of ideas, seeing as it could end in your untimely demise. You could throw the cat out the window, which is the untimely demise of the cat, and you also have to face the consequences of the cat's owner. Say these are the only few things that you immediately think of. If you stop for a moment and simply think, what else can I do to have this situation? None of these options work for me. If you stop and think about it, there are many other options that you can add, which is the idea of active self-determinism. An easier one would be you go get the person who owns the house that you're in and tell them and have them shoo the cat away. That way you can be in the room, but not around the cat. Compromise in these subjects is necessary because it allows for flexibility. It's not so set in stone. You don't have to follow such strict guidelines. It allows you to take the best ideas from idealism and materialism, or determinism and free will, and create an idea that best fits it for you. It allows you to keep an open mind. It allows you to choose what you believe is the best thing, whether you determine that or not. And while the correct answer may never be discovered, because you're always going to have more questions, there's always going to be more information for you to take in. Being flexible in this and following compromise gives you the best chance of finding whatever the correct answer may be for you. And like I said earlier, there are problems with each thing. The biggest one that I had is materialism. Materialism says that things are only real if they can be physically felt, if things can be, well, easily, you can use your senses to feel them. Materialism only follows this rule, but I feel there are things in the world that we consider to be real that are not physical. Kind of like God. You may not be able to see him, you may not be able to feel him, but many people consider him to be real. If you follow the idea of materialism, there's a big problem with that. I personally have no problems with idealism. I feel that out of the two of them, it's probably the best idea to go, it's probably the better side deal to go with, but the middle ground is still the best way for you to go. It allows you to take the best of each sides and add them together. With free will, it can easily be disproven with determinism and causality. If you know the internal and external stimuli, you can find out where things are going to be, what they're going to do, what they're going to think if they have the ability to think. And determinism, while the best of the two, it's still very difficult to be 100% sure on what the person's thinking, how they're going to react, what the internal and external stimuli is, what their causes are. There's a lot of problems with it, but out of the two, it's probably the best, while the middle ground is even better. In conclusion, though whether you're choosing the leader of a group, whether you're choosing to answer how the best way to answer what is real is, compromise is the best solution. It allows you some flexibility and some give and take from each side. It's kind of like getting to have your cake and eat it too. So while some may seem more compelling than the others, compromise and taking a happy medium is the best way to go. Thank you.